There will come a point in your journey in reality shifting. If you haven't already experienced it, most people do at some point. Although there could be exceptions, but my guides are telling me no. There will be a point in your journey where you will need to face reality head on, vis-a-vis. And the reason for this is that it is actually to your benefit on this earth school. The lessons that you are working on are very unique to you, but there are archetypes of lessons that are shared amongst us in the collective, which is why collective tarot or astrology readings can speak to so many people at a particular moment in time. And so collectively, we go through things, even though the nuances and the details might change in our personal lives. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see in people that are trying to reality shift, and I talk to a lot of shifters, and so I'm qualified to make this sweeping generalization. One of the biggest mistakes that I see is the tendency to try to slide away, to slip away, to dodge karma or consequences, or to not embrace the challenge or the lesson. And reality shifting is a very powerful tool, but it doesn't get you out of jail. And it doesn't get you out of jail free, particularly if you are bringing some karma to you. And so as a result, people can see other stories or get a taste of reality shifting and think that this is the answer to their problem. And it is indeed an answer, but it may not be the answer that you are looking for. Because what happens is that, let's say you are practicing self-love and your work is on boundaries. Many people actually have to work on boundaries. It's not something, especially when it comes to love, it's not something that many of us are trained on from an early age. And it could be the cultural upbringing that we have, but a lot of our lessons come from family and come from close partnerships as a way to teach us how to really love ourselves, really love ourselves. And I'll have another episode on self-love. It's worth it to listen to, even if you've already mastered it. But for now, let's just assume that we're all on the same page. So what happens is that you're working on this as a spiritual lesson, whether or not you are aware of it in all of the degrees. And most of you are very aware, and you know kind of what your packages of lessons are. But there's oftentimes layers of understanding that as we progress through a lesson, we're like, oh, now I get it. How many times does that happen to you? This has happened to me so many times where it's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this. And then you hit a wall, and then you hit a breakthrough, and then you look backwards and you're like, wow, my idea of what self-love and boundaries were, just for an example, you can insert your lesson, has totally transformed and evolved with this wisdom and experience. Discernment is a great one. That is such a powerful lesson that a lot of people are working on. And it goes hand in hand with self-love and boundaries. Because if you don't have good discernment, then you'll let anybody through your door. And you'll reap some really tough consequences as a result. And what I have observed is that, especially when we start manifesting, is that we want to be in control of our reality. And there is a fine line between being the captain of your ship and being in control. And let's say that you are working on discernment. And for example, I knew somebody, I just met them recently, and they were telling me a story about how one year for the holidays, they invited a homeless woman in to spend the night and to get off the street. And this is somebody that seemed okay at first. And I don't have the backstory of intuition, and I don't want to say that this person was working on discernment, but what happened is that they had a great time. But when the homeless woman woke up in, I guess, the early morning, she was in the middle of a psychotic break. And I don't have any other details about what provoked this or triggered it, but she beat the person almost to death. She actually literally beat the person that invited her in almost to death because she got lost in this alternate version of reality in her mind. And the person that told me this told me that they had to go to the hospital. They actually thought that they died. I think it's entirely possible after hearing that her head was bashed in and she was bleeding profusely and had a brain bleed, and gruesome, right? It was a bloody mess. It was a miracle she survived. Question mark of whether or not she did survive or shifted into another reality layer. That's neither here nor there right now. And so we could say that, could she have reality shifted away and prevented that from happening? Well, sure, if she took her innate nature and suppressed it. And this is what I did for a long time. I didn't actually do the work. I just suppressed the part of me that wanted to go and touch all the fires. And now I do go and touch all the fires, but I'm conscious when I do it and selective about which fires I go and play with. And so most people do this, where they just shut down that part of themselves. I'm never going to date somebody like that again. I'm never going to work for somebody like that again. And then they develop a typology of characters to avoid. That's not working on the lesson. That's not working on the lesson. That's shutting down, and that's running from the lesson. And so the alternative is that this person was working on discernment, and she couldn't reality shift away because she was fated to have an encounter like that. And if it wasn't with the homeless person, it would have been somebody else. Maybe she would have offered some guy a ride on the side of the highway instead of the chapter that she chose for that evening. And then she would have been faced with a personal safety issue. Or maybe she would have done something else, right? See, the universe will insert events, calamities, challenges, obstacles at certain time points for you to actually work on these lessons. So the right answer is that she would have been in tune with whatever the universe was going to throw at her. She would have been in tune with her intuition. She wasn't going to avoid all the homeless people. That's bypassing. She wasn't going to ignore the magnetism of wanting to help a poor soul. Maybe it was a guy with his son, right? And she would have been drawn to help him. Like, I really need to pull over and give them a ride. And the key is that she would have been in tune with the red flags along the way that would have helped her to actually master discernment if she was working on that. Again, I don't know her soul path. So this is what I mean when I say that vis-a-vis, you can't always run from your lessons, because the universe will keep sending them to you. They will keep sending narcissists to you, borderlines to you, people that are very, very toxic, if that is your bag. And there are those that have a whole chain of relationships with abusive people, with highly toxic people, with needy people, with people who steal from them, people who cheat from them. And it's like this lesson on repeat that you might think that you're doing a great job breaking up with people, only to find out that you're getting in bed with another version of the same archetype lesson. And this, if you're in a situation like this, you're welcome to reach out to me for one-on-one coaching. We can unpack your pattern. It's like a puzzle. I love doing it. Your shadow patterns, we can crack your puzzle. So what you can do is you can take inventory, you can take stock of your repeating characters, the archetypes in your life, and you can look at the theme. And this is when you should turn to meet it head on, to deeply understand, why are you attracted to situations, to people, to jobs like that? I know so many people that are working for others and don't feel valued, don't feel seen, don't feel taken care of. And that's its own sort of suffering in hell. And then on top of that, some people also have a toxic boss or a toxic work environment, or they're drawing clients to them that are sucking everything out of them. And so this is the time to shake things up, to wake up, and to see how your reality is trying to present itself to you time and time again. And when you start to notice a pattern, and this is what I do with myself relentlessly, it's fun. It is actually fun. I really do enjoy it. When you notice a pattern, that is when you start looking inside. So first, we look outside to understand, what is the mechanism inside? What is the lesson that I'm working on? Do I really have low self-worth? Are my prices too low? Is my salary too low? Do I advocate for myself? Do I stand up for myself? Is it easier to stand up for other people than it is for me? That's a self-love thing, by the way. Is it easier to go and rescue people versus taking time to take care of myself? And I spend all of my energy helping others on the phone, being their support system, being their guide, being there, and then I don't have anybody to do that for me. Why don't you do that for yourself? Why? Why don't you go and book a massage for yourself, if that's your thing? Or something nice, something that will break the monotony, the routine. Do you need permission to do that? Why do you need permission to take care of yourself? I remember when I was married and I needed permission. I don't anymore. Now I'm very good about taking care of myself, but way back then, way, talking decades ago, I couldn't even buy like a little loofah for myself without feeling guilty. I couldn't spend money on myself. And I attracted a partner that was very frivolous. And I loved that about him because he knew how to take care of himself and to take care of me. And he was above and beyond insistent that I spend money on myself. And he helped me to break that pattern. I really, really appreciate that. And so if you are trapped in a needing permission to take care of yourself, to rest. Some people have this with workaholism. They feel like they're not a valuable human being if they just take time out and do nothing, or numb out for a bit or watch really bad TV or movies. And so then being sick becomes this really weird permission slip for them. And then they turn into almost this like baby. It's so endearing when it happens. It's so endearing, when somebody can actually fall into being taken care of and taking time out. But then where it becomes pathological is when their immune system starts to rewire itself to get sick all the time. So they have that experience of being taken care of because that's a psychological need. And so then there's a war with the body. There's a war with immunity. There's a war with health because the psyche actually needs to feel nurtured. But the masculinity, or the masculine energy, especially when it's on overdrive, if it's about do, go, go, can create a disconnect and a sequence, a chain of events that perpetually keeps somebody sick or in fear of getting sick, and thus in fear of not actually being of value for a moment in time, but also needing the support and the rest. That's for somebody in particular. And so you see these lessons play out in the way that we choose, the way that we decide, the way that we energize ourselves, the way that we take time out, the partners that we decide to spend years with, or even just a couple of nights. And so literally we create our worlds based on these internal patterns. So when you start to see a pattern, that is your moment to go inward and to start to unlock what it all means. And this is my specialty, but you can do it on your own. I personally like journaling and I like talking to myself in monologues. I haven't done it for a while, but I did it for years straight. Seriously, every day I would pull up this little diary app that I love, Journey app. I love it so much. I don't get sponsored by it, but I recommend it to everybody. I purchased the pro version because I want to support developers who actually maintain really cool things like that. And I would just make voice recordings. Seriously, sometimes 8 hours of nonstop doom, 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 doom. That's when I had the flexibility to do so, and verbally process it and literally walk through memories. You can journal and do the same thing. You can write a nonfiction book, a memoir, so you have something at the end of it. But what you want to do is you want to find whatever process works for you and to unpack the trend of what is inside that is then creating the decision matrix that you are then shaping your world with. You are conforming reality to reflect something in you, and it's not always a 1-to-1 ratio. Sometimes people say, oh, whatever you see on the outside is what it's a little more complicated, in my opinion. It's not a 1-to-1, 80-20. 80% of the time that's true, but 20% of the time, especially when you're conscious, that's not true. But sometimes there is a complementary opposition that you have drawn to you. So it's not a, like, let's say you're fire and your partner is water. Then you can't look at your partner and say, oh, they're just like me, they're a reflection of me. No, it's the opposite. And through the opposite, we learn about our shadow and the complementary nature of those aspects help to reveal the deep webs of our subconscious mind that are yearning to come out because we are creating this pattern. So you can't shift away if you have a vis-a-vis lesson that you're working on, it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. You can move countries, you can change jobs, you can change partners, you can change friends, you can get new family, adopted family, and what will happen is that your reality will literally morph into exactly where you left off. Although sometimes it actually starts a little bit, I have to wrap this up. I wish I could go into this, but it actually resets you from the beginning point. It's like when you start a relationship, you go through the dating process. Whereas, like, let's say you leave a relationship midway through it, 5 years into it. So you don't just pick up right at that 5-year mark where that lesson is. You have to go through the courting process with the next person. But then you get to the same place. You actually get to the same place and you work on the same thing, but now with a different person. But you've wasted time. This is why I really, really, really recommend doing the shadow work if you don't already. And if you need somebody to assist you with that, you can email me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com.